Hello everybody, welcome to episode 10 of the World of Brickfilms podcast. I'm your host, William of MBStudio. Joining me today is my co-host and good friend, Sean Munoz of Thistof.
Hello, once again.
And our special guest today is Christof Munoz. Is that how you spell that?
Close enough.
So Christof Munoz of Thistof. Hello.
Yep, hello, hi everybody. Hello, William, Sean.
Hello.
So, I guess I might as well just kind of start off by saying congratulations for coming second in the recent brawl.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was a great entry, and I think because we were talking a little bit like before, sort of during the brawl, and you came up with a couple of ideas. You told me the story you had, and you showed me a couple of, like, behind the scenes stuff, and I think sort of straight away I kind of knew this was top three kind of material.
Well, thank you. You had shown me your idea as well, and we had talked about possibly collaborating, and I really liked your idea, but at the same time, this whole thing had just kind of come to me over the course of a day that I had spent with a friend. We were actually picking up her mom from a retreat at a monastery, and the whole thing just kind of like felt inspired, and I was like, yeah, William, I got to do this other thing, So anyway, you were there. I don't need to tell you, but this is for Sean and everybody else not listening. Wait, not listening? Yeah, probably. Sorry, guys.
Well, hopefully we haven't lost them already. But yeah, I do think that the idea for a contest entry is very important. That you could win based on just having an excellent idea, as long as it's executed decently enough.
Yeah, I think sometimes people
undervalue that.
Yeah, but yeah. So I might as well ask, how did you discover brick filming?
Well, way back in the year of, I think it was 2015, maybe. I know I'm a latecomer in this, but actually, no. Back in the day, back when I was in maybe junior high, we used to make little stop motions with the camcorder, and we would like hit record, stop, and it would be 4 or 5 frames. Not steady frame rate either. But we used to make little Mortal Kombat characters, and we built the pit and everything. This was like myself and a friend of mine, and it was on his family camera, so of course I have no access to any. I mean, all that stuff's long disappeared. And then I just kind of got away from it. I ended up studying animation in college, and then I think it was the end of 2015, I was working in a factory, and take notes here, everybody. This factory theme is going to become a bit pertinent a little bit later. But I really hated the job, and I quit the job because my hands were going numb, and I had like a pinched nerve or something. Anyway, so I was like, okay, I need to get back into animation because that's kind of like where I really need to be. So I started looking online for just like contests, different things to kind of start building up my reel. And then I discovered that there was this like whole community of, bricks in motion and everything. And I was like, oh, well, what's this? Well, they have a contest coming up, and it's THAC, and so I guess I'll give it a shot, and the rest is history. So yeah.
Yeah, because that's definitely something I wanted to ask. Actually, is that from studying it, you sort of learn about animation in general, didn't you? You had some experience in that before.
Yeah. Actually, most it was in the program that I was in. It was both traditional and computer, but no stop motion at all. And I kind of tended towards the the paper animation, the hand drawn. Although I never really got too far with that. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to show for that. If I have an Instagram where I've been putting some of my older stuff, but and then I did some computer stuff as well. And I had some really great professors who had worked with Disney and the Family Guy and things like that. So I had some really good instruction with that, and I think I was able to just apply a lot of that to the brick films.
Yeah.
So what were some of the brick films you encountered first?
Pretty much everything that was like coming out right around at that time. And then started looking at some of the older stuff. Just random things. I did at one point see Robota, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Which of course had some, inspiration for me in terms of doing a sort of, a non-minifig animation, which I kind of had in the back of my mind for a long time to do. And then, of course, when I got this idea of the robots with the radios in their chests and everything, well, I knew I couldn't do that with minifigs. So that's when I revisited the idea of the, well, I don't know what you call them, like brick-built figures.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
did the figures predate Brawl, or were they made? Was it after the contest theme was announced that you started on those?
Yeah, it was after the theme was announced. I had gotten like the eyes, for example. I think it was during when we were doing the Brickfilm Christmas, and I made like 4 or 5 orders from Bricklink, and so I would just like fill it in with little extra things here and there. I was like, oh well, eyes, that might come in handy someday. So I threw a bunch of those in.
Yeah.
3 sets of eyes. Yeah.
I know what that's
But
like.
yeah, because you want to fill it out because you're paying for the shipping.
You
so.
do, but I mean, at the same time, I've tried to cut back on doing that recently. I've been trying
me
to
too.
tend towards just getting what I actually want.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it does. It all adds up.
Yeah, it adds up quick enough.
But I mean, at the time too, I also knew that I was going to be doing the Winter Olympics thing. So I was like, okay, well, I'll throw in some ice skates and a rifle, and kind of little things that I thought I might be needing.
Yeah, that's handy if you already have an idea for what you're doing next as well.
Exactly.
Then you
Yeah.
can just get the little props. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've done that recently a lot. Just like well, most of the stuff I do is kind of like Lego I buy. Usually it's just going into Lego store and just getting like pick a brick and stuff. And I think the good thing about that is that like you're not having to worry about the shipping, so you can just try and fill that cup as much as you can. And it does lead you into getting like lots of like small pieces, and those eye pieces again are one of those kind of things. Like, oh, might as well, And I think recently I just thought, oh, I like these brown chairs, and they're not really not necessarily sort of things you see a lot in sets. So I thought, oh, let's just get a load of brown chairs, and since then I've used them quite a lot. I'm really happy that I got them, but I really do like those eye designs. I think they'll probably come in. You'll probably start seeing them more now in like Brickfilms, and I think it could even make for a kind of comedic animation for a minifigure, like this kind of cartoony, him being like a minifigure being scared or something. You could have like the big eye could suddenly appear or something like that. I am sort of wondering about doing that myself. Actually, that'd be quite a funny thing to do.
That would be funny.
They might be a bit too big though.
Never. Exaggeration is one of the 12 principles of animation.
Yeah, but you'd probably need something in between at some point just to sell the effect.
True, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's what a lot of people on the Bricks in Motion community say is that the only reason why the day Brickfilms.com crashed is still remembered is because of the that scene with Night Owl, his eyes pop out.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking of just now.
Yeah, because that's kind of like I guess it's kind of in between to the size. It's not like as big as like getting those eye pieces, and it's probably the kind of the size you'd probably want to make them. It's like I think it's putty, isn't it? Or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, actually that's one of the things that I was thinking about, like when we were possibly going to do a collaboration, is that I was really worried that I wouldn't be able to do the robot animation justice, because I really don't have much experience in animation outside of just brick filming. So having to learn a new craft was something that I really worried about, and I knew that it probably wouldn't look as good as the stuff that you did. So I'm kind of glad in a way that you managed to make the whole thing, because I don't know if I'd have done it justice really. It's I think it looks really good. Yeah.
Well, thanks. I'm also glad that you were able to kind of spend that time to focus on your was it Busker's Opus, which has to be one of the most interesting brick film titles. But it shows the level of detail that you were able to put in that. It's probably better that you weren't stretched too thin.
Yeah,
and it was nice to get 2 top 10 entries rather than just one.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
But while we're on the topic of reception, actually, in the podcast we did with Sanjira, the topic came up of the actual bricks that are used to build the wall, and we were wondering, how are they so misaligned, if you know what I mean? It's a strange texture to the wall.
It is a strange. So as a child, I had my Aunt Teeny, who was actually my great aunt. She was sort of like a grandmother to us, and she was the one who bought me my first Lego set. And at one point, her I believe it was her hairdresser, gave her this large box of Lego and other kind of strange bricks. I mean, some of them were really bizarre. That her son had, I guess, outgrown. Like, oh, I've outgrown my Lego, Mom. Here, give them away. Which I can't really quite relate to. But anyway, somehow we ended up inheriting all these. Some of them are really ancient. I think some of them might be from the 60s, 70s for sure. Maybe even the 1960s. Some of these they're just such old pieces, and some of them are so warped that I can't even use them. Every once in a while I'll pull one out and be like, oh, I guess that one's not going in the wall. So some of them are a bit warped, and all of them are, quite discolored in many different ways. There's actually I think his name is Star Wars Studio 100 has a running joke where he calls it the yellow snow. Because in the Winter Olympics, so much of my white snow wasn't so white. So we kind of, we post that on each other's thing, going back and forth, sort of a running joke, yellow snow, the legend continues, sort of things and stuff like that. But yeah, I like it. It gives it a lot of, like you said, texture. Particularly the red bricks, because some of them are a lot lighter than, they're faded and different, I don't know. I've just chosen to embrace that. And
I like that quality.
Well, yeah, you're the one with the stain behind the couch on your on your series there.
Yeah, I'm going for the award of most disgusting Lego set in brick filming.
I think you won that many years ago. I'm not sure. In fact, I don't think I've even seen the episode where that happens, if that even happened in an episode.
Yeah, it does happen in one episode and then just stays ever since. Okay,
because all the ones I've seen already have that in there.
Yeah,
I think it's
9 years ago now. So yeah, there's been a good few, a lot more with the stain than without.
Right, yeah. I'll have to go back at some point and find that pivotal moment.
Yeah, I think it's the Valentine's special,
is it? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll play the clip when this is edited.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I think one of the things I find quite funny is that, because a lot of these bricks, sometimes you won't even think about, like, oh, this one is from, like, last year, and this one is from, the 70s or something. But, like, it's quite interesting seeing these, like, discoloured, like, bricks, and the fact that, Lego is old enough now to have that. And I think the time will come when even the kind of, the newer colours, like the brown stuff, they might end up fading into, like, the old colour brown that used to be Lego,
Yeah, actually, I hadn't actually bought any new sets in, I don't know, quite a while, until recently when I started doing brick filming again. Then I was like, okay, I started gradually picking up a set or two here or there, and I saw the gray color is a little bit more blue now than it used to be.
Yeah.
There's just like it's slightly different. And then when I saw it, I thought, oh my god, my old gray Lego pieces are all so faded and yellow and ugly. And then I discovered that, oh no, they actually did change the formula a little bit there. I felt much better about it after that. Not that I really cared. I mean, you've seen my brick walls.
Yeah. But, I think it does add a kind of level of charm. And I think it's kind of funny whenever you see brick films, and you can tell when that person grew up with Lego. Like, someone who grew up with 90s Lego has all the 90s figures and all the 90s sets and stuff, and then someone who just recently got into Lego has got all the new stuff. And it's kind of interesting. You almost get to know who a little bit about the animator from the type of stuff he uses.
That's true, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely have a lot of those. I've been getting more newer pieces, partially through the Dimensions sets, which I probably wouldn't have bought if they're on discount everywhere. I got them for $1 or $2. But also through Bricklink, getting specific, I want that specific piece of hair, or whatever it is. But yeah, no, someone commented, I think it was actually Paul from Digital Wizards who commented on the Winter Olympics. He's like, oh, it has a really retro look with all those figures. I was like, oh, I guess so. I mean, that's just
what you have,
I guess.
But like, that's kind of funny. Did you notice that in my raw entry, I actually used a pigtail piece that they discontinued in the 1980s?
I didn't realize that was discontinued. No.
Yeah, because I think they've since replaced them with like more detailed heads. Because originally, I think there's only a couple of pieces they used for women, and I think the pigtails was the first one you started seeing in 1978, and then as years went by, they have that kind of the more common like straight hair, like quite sort of
like parted it down the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they after they sort of introduced the straight hair, they kind of they discontinued the pigtails. But it's kind of funny because I think I bought some old Lego last year in like an old tin, and there was a couple of those pieces, and I thought, oh yeah, this is really good. I like having pieces that haven't been around for like 30 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was also annoyed when they introduced the bluish greys and reddish browns instead of the old ones, and then everything didn't match with the Lego I had. Even though I like it when there's walls that are made with all sorts of yellowed bricks and discolored bricks, but then for some reason when I'm building it myself and I come across, yellowish grey and bluish grey, it annoys me because it's like, I know technically speaking these are officially different shades, whereas I don't feel that way when it's all meant to be white, or it was all white at one point.
I think I know what you mean. There's a certain like I don't know if it's a neurosis, but like it's hard to make yourself feel like you want to do it right.
Yeah.
And I think there's like an innate thing where we want things to be perfect, and we have to realize, oh yeah, they don't need to be perfect. In fact, they might be better if they're not. I don't know if anybody else has this. Sometimes when I'm building, let's say I'm just building a wall with regular 2x4 bricks, and I'll like start to put a brick down, and I'll feel like, oh no, it needs to go the other way around.
Oh yeah, and the Lego
like there's Lego a magnetic force to it or something.
Direction,
but
yeah,
either the studs have to be, the lettering on the studs have to go one way, or you just kind of get a feeling like, that doesn't feel right. Let me turn it around, and then you realize it's not important. It'll never show up. I just need to hurry up and make this thing.
I catch myself doing that. Like I at first I'm lining up the word Lego so it goes in the same direction every time, and I sort of have to force myself to stop doing it because it's too crazy.
Yeah. All right, I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Do you ever get that thing where have you ever got those like old pieces that are like faces, and like there'll be like one piece that's an eye and next piece will be like a smiley face and stuff? Because sometimes I've got like a box of yellow bricks and I just build it up, and then I've finished it, and then and as soon as I'm about to start shooting the scene, I realise that there's a smiley face in amongst the wall.
One eye, yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't even know where I got those, but I have so many of those. I'll always try to build them so that they're not facing. Actually, I have a picture. I'm going to post it up soon. What was it? The Brickfilm Day recent, the Fright competition that I just did. I have two pictures. One is what the camera sees, and the other one is from another angle, and you can see all the weird bricks and stuff. There's like a big sign that says sheriff and all this stuff, but it's not visible to the camera.
Yeah.
But it's just a way of showing, like what these sets really look like. They look so full and complete from the camera view because you build for the camera. But then you see it from another angle and it just looks like garbage. There's like an eye with a smiley thing or whatever.
That's always interesting, yeah. Seeing the back of a set and realizing how ugly it looks.
I really liked that animation you did for the Brickfilm Day contest, especially because there were two people being frightened in it at the same time.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
And the animation on them was all different techniques.
Basically, I couldn't decide. I was like, I want to do the jump where the body stretches out, but then, I was like, and then I wanted to drop the lamp. I had all these things I wanted to do, so I was like, well, I'll just do two figures.
Yeah, most people just focused on the animation of one figure, but yeah, this one really impressed me because there was both of them going on at the same time.
Thanks. Yeah, I've been doing some work with Digital Wizards recently, and we did one video. I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about, so I'll just say we did one video with buildable figures. The tall or the 10-inch Lego buildable figures, and we're doing another video now with more traditional like 12-inch action figures, but they're involved several characters going on at one time, so I'm just kind of like getting more into that mode of tracking 3 or 4 characters at a time.
Yeah, that's always been the hallmark of Digital Wizards' work. Actually, how did you become connected with Digital Wizards?
Well, actually, this was around, I want to say it was like on the first of the year or something. It was like right after the New Year. I had been like deathly ill with the flu, and I was like in bed for a week. It was really awful. But at the time, I just, I started, I was like, I'm just going to start applying to things, animation job. I think I applied to the second Lego movie and never heard from them. I applied to Stupid Buddy and never heard from them. If any of you all are listening, give me a call. No, I'm just kidding. And the other one I applied to was Dave Pickett from the book, the Lego animation book. And I actually did a phone interview with him. He was a really great guy. And he's out in Chicago, unfortunately, and I'm here in California. So it's a bit of a commute, let's just say. He ended up contacting me later and said, hey, I think I'm going to go with someone more local, but I really enjoyed, talking to you. I really think you have some potential, or I can't remember what he said. It wasn't quite so condescending. It was actually very encouraging. And he said, I know this guy out in Los Angeles, this guy Paul, who does Digital Wizards. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember them. He did the Ghostbusters thing and things. And he's like, yeah, well, I want to put you in contact with him. I think that you guys might be a good match. So he really kind of introduced me to them, and went over there, did some work on the... what was it? The Jurassic Disney World. And then I worked on another commercial with them, and then these last two projects. So I've been doing some work with them. These last two projects are interesting. And again, like I said, I don't know how much, if it's under wraps, but it's something kind of special in terms of the way they're filmed. And they're also these like really long shots. I think the current one we're working on, the whole entire thing is one shot. And so we're doing it in shifts. I'm working nights. There's another guy who's working days. I think Sean Willits has come in a couple times to do little portions. And, we'll do 8, 10, 12 seconds or whatever in our shift. And then we'll leave it there. And then the next guy comes in and continues the action from there. So it's kind of like a relay race, trying to get these really long extended shots done. And there's a reason that they're long. But anyway, I'll just keep your eyes posted on Digital Wizards for something coming soon.
Sounds interesting. But that's a great story, though. It's nice that Dave Pickett helped you even though he wasn't hiring you.
Yeah, I think that really says a lot about his character and his personality. I'm really grateful to him for, giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, hopefully one of these days we'll get to talk with him as well on a podcast episode.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. Yeah, but yeah, I guess I'll ask what is your kind of like your step-by-step process?
Let's see. Well, existential crisis, waiting for the next contest to be announced, finding out the theme. No, I'm just kidding. The themes do help, but I'm trying to be a little bit more of a, get some of my own projects going and things, which I feel like I have more in the past year, as opposed to like the first year that I was doing some brick filming. But the themes help, sometimes it's just like, it gets you thinking in a direction that you might not have done. Let's see, sometimes I script, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I board, sometimes I don't. I'm probably one to always be like, you should always storyboard your movie, otherwise it's going to be haphazard. But I think I do a lot of that mentally. And a lot of the stuff where it's simple gags and things like the Winter Olympics, I think it just reads best in like a simple, kind of more straightforward shot. So I didn't really do a whole lot of boarding on things like that. I sometimes record dialogue. I sometimes don't. I guess there's no real set formula per se, but I think one of the things that really for me is like kind of getting psyched up to do it. Like I'll have an idea and then I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll order the pieces. Sometimes I'll kind of lay out a soundtrack first and know, okay, this is what I'm going to be kind of timing it to. Or sometimes I'll just the real trick always is like getting down to the actual day of shooting. Like, okay, today I have to shoot. Like, like then you start like thinking about like, I don't know. It's easy to get psyched out. Like, oh, it's it's got to be perfect. Oh, okay. Well, I can't start yet. Oh, when am I going to start?
Yeah.
And then like finally, once you get started, then it usually tends to flow pretty well.
I agree. Yeah, the hardest part is just starting. I think.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what contests are great for.
Yeah, that's also true, especially the ones with the time limit, which is why I've never completed the summer contest. I just feel like there's too much pressure. Like, we have 3 months to do a contest. Like, it would have to be amazing at that point, you know? When it's Thack, it's like, oh, it's 24 hours.
Yeah, I think that does turn a lot of people off. I feel like everyone assumes that somebody else is going to make a masterpiece and they don't bother entering the summer contest.
I think that's pretty much it. But I think, like, for example, the stuff that I've been doing with Digital Wizards has helped me to just kind of, like, dive in and get my hands dirty, even on my own projects. Like, just like the sheer amount of work and just, like, you know, getting there every day, doing animation every day. Then when it comes time to do, like, for example, the Fright thing I did partially before and after my shift at Digital Wizards a couple weeks ago. So I got up, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to do this. I built the thing, and then, like, the next day I started animating, and then, like, later that night I, finished it up. But it's getting easier not to kind of be as hesitant, just from, like, getting into the habit of animating more, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's that kind of thing. I feel like the summer contest allows a very dangerous thing, and that is procrastination. Because you keep thinking, oh, it's okay, I've got 3 weeks left, I can just, don't have to do much animation now. And you keep saying that, and then you realise you've got a week left, and you've got to really rush it. And I think what's really good about, like, Brawl and Thack is that you've got to do it now. You've got to do it now, and that means that you do it, you get it done. And I think, I used to definitely think, oh yeah, the summer contest is my favourite, I've got so much time. But now trying Brawl, and taking part in Thack multiple times, I've come to really appreciate those shorter contests. And I can see why they do attract more than the big, summer contest
I haven't
ones.
voiced any of these concerns to anyone yet, but recently I have been thinking that the summer contest, as far as I can tell, it's kind of in a bit of an awkward spot. I feel like the time limit contests just make so much more sense as contests nowadays. Because, for the reason being that in the old days, like, the best films of the year could be made for the summer contest in 2 months. I'm talking about, like, 2006. Like, Grace made it, I think, a month and a half. But nowadays, the best films of the year aren't going to be made in 3 months. They're going to be made in, like, a year or two. So I think that the summer contest is in an awkward spot where it's not a time limit contest that, kicks people into gear, but it's also not long enough to make some extreme masterpiece for anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's kind of like the more people are animating, the better technology has got, and the standards are so much higher now.
It all takes longer.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, you could kind of think, oh, it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, it's a good story, and this seems good. But nowadays, I think everything is being judged at such a high standard, simply because there's so many people animating, and so I think it's in an awkward position where it's not one of those, like, ones where it's got, like, a very tight limit, and it's also not allowing you to spend, like, a year working on it, making it the best thing you could possibly make. So, yeah.
I think it's essentially becoming a relic of the past, really, and I think it could do with some restructuring, or maybe just focusing all the attention into Brawl. I'm not sure. I mean, not suggesting anything here, but yeah. Yeah,
making it a month-long contest, perhaps, But what was the, like, which brick filmers are kind of, do you think are your biggest inspiration?
Oh, names. I'm terrible with names. Show me their icons. Let's see.
Well, has there ever been anyone that you particularly studied the animation of, or did you come to brick filming already with an understanding of Lego animation and you didn't have to do that?
I'm sure there have been some that I've studied, or at least taken things away from. Twickabrick. Twickabrick's up there. I think he's made some really fantastic stuff. Quest for Life. Silent Frames, there you go.
Silent Frames, yeah.
It comes to mind.
That's what they go by now, anyway.
Oh.
I was about to say Lego Ender.
Oh, right, yeah, I do remember hearing that name at one point. But that was probably still before my time.
I think they only changed it last year, actually.
Then maybe that's why I remember it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you've learned in particular from collaborating with other people in real life on Lego animation?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. I've learned I can collaborate with people. I think that was, like, the biggest thing that I took away from the Brickfilm Christmas was, just that I mean, animation is such a collaborative medium to begin with. And I remember noticing that when I was studying animation in school, was that there wasn't a whole lot of... I guess in some studies there can be like a lot of competitiveness or kind of cattiness where it's like, people trying to outdo each other and everything. And what I've kind of experienced in the animation community, both at school and now in the Brickfilm community, I think most animators know instinctively that it is a collaborative medium and they're not going to get very far on their own. And as a result, I think they're a lot more willing to kind of share techniques or, kind of build each other up as opposed to trying to cut down people by seeing them as a competition. I think there's just a kind of a natural tendency among animators to be kind of more generous in that way.
Yeah, I do. People are happy to share inventive techniques they've come up with.
Yeah.
They really like for other people to know how they did something. They're not trying to keep it
so
secret.
Maybe there's a little bit of pride involved as well. Well, actually, this is how I did that. But I also wanted to mention Winter Sock Productions, the other Christof.
Oh yeah.
I've really enjoyed his films. I think his what was the one he just did was it Thack with the pet
that
shop?
was for Shaq, yeah.
Oh, Shaq, yeah. That was hilarious. I watch that every now and then just to have a good laugh.
I think it actually is my favourite entry of that contest.
Yeah, likewise. It's so funny.
He's an interesting one, and he's been around for a long time, but really recently he's made a lot more films. He's really picked up the pace in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
it's usually not what happens.
I've gone back and seen some of his older things, and I can see there's like definitely. I mean, I think the same is true for anybody. There's like a jump, I think, where there's like a bunch of kind of like fun, simple little things, and then there's like there's like Tap Dancing with Fred Astaire, and then there's like App Man, which by the way, I would not mind doing a voice for. Plug.
Okay.
If on one condition, it has to come out, because I've done voices for 2 or 3 things that have not come out. So
yeah, but I think that was definitely. I think App Man was definitely my film that was kind of like the one that kind of defined me in a way. I don't know if that makes sense. Like before that, it was kind of like I wasn't really sure what kind of stuff I was doing, and I think I found it hard to sort of define how I wanted to be as an animator and stuff. And I think I got the the C920, which completely changed everything, like in the way I lit the sets, the way I shot them, and just like I put more attention to detail in just like everything. And I think that was definitely the breaking point. I think, and I think that's kind of And I think everybody has like a brick film which kind of changes who they were as brick filmers, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think at some point everyone has that film where they think, okay, for this one I really have to put the effort in. Like, you could coast along for ages just making the same quality, but then at some point you make one thing where you say to yourself, this is going to be much better than everything else.
Yeah.
And for me, of course, that was Parallel Panic, and that was shot over the course of 2 years. So by the time I was editing it, I was thinking, oh no, the stuff I shot 2 years ago is probably nowhere near as good as the later stuff, and it's going to look all jarring. But then when I was watching it again, I thought, oh no, it actually holds up, because from the start I was trying to put in as much effort as possible.
Yeah, because I mean, there'd be nothing worse than taking years making a film, and in that time improving so much. So you've got like you've made loads of contest entries and everything's looking good, and then you release this film that took 2 years and it not being as good. There's so.
Oh, yeah.
I think you definitely have to when you're thinking about like type of film you're making. You've got to really kind of think, okay, if I'm going to be finished in 2 years, I've got to make this my best work, But yeah.
But there was a brief mention of Brickfilm Christmas there, and I'd like to get back to that because obviously there's a lot to talk about with that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's funny that it was a successful community project, and at the time, well, I mean, I know it's still recent, but when you made it, you were a relative newcomer. And I think that's no coincidence.
How so?
Because, well, all the people who've been around for a long time just immediately say, oh, community project's never going to get done. Yeah,
I did hear a little bit of that.
So it would take somebody who hasn't been around that atmosphere to actually get one done.
I see, yeah.
Or to even start to make one in the first place. And when I heard that you were working on one, I was watching the thread, and I was thinking, as usual, I was just thinking, yeah, it probably isn't going to happen. And then at the end, you were talking about it like as if it's just about to come out, and I was saying, oh my god, this one's actually going to get made. I better attach my name to it quickly. And just made something in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of, because I think I always want to see these kind of things succeed. Because so often people will come up with these big ambitious projects, and it's always kind of sad when after a few months of reading the thread and they kind of go, I'm not going to do this, and to see something go into fruition and actually be made and be as good as it was is definitely it was really uplifting to see. I think it was a really good end to the year, I think.
Well, thanks. Yeah. There were a number of people who, after the fact, I wish I would have been involved.
Yeah.
Are you going to do it again next year? I'll be in it next year. And I was like, well, I don't really think it can be a yearly thing. I mean, even, not from a collaboration side, but just like, it's kind of its own thing. And that magic, I don't think could be recaptured.
I don't think so.
I think there's the risk of it becoming oversaturated.
Yeah, you wouldn't want it to be stale. And also, you probably, if you made another one, everyone would just say, it's not as good as the first one. Exactly,
right. But going back to what you were asking me about, we were talking about collaboration and what I've learned from brick filming. And that was one of the things that I've learned was with that collaboration. I guess kind of being willing to let certain things go. It's always been very hard for me not to be in complete control of every single aspect of something. I did there was like a bus stop clip that I did for the Ninjago movie contest, where the guy sits on the bench and everything. And my brother helped out by doing all the sounds, editing the sounds and everything. And that was really hard for me. I was just like, no, I want to do the sounds. I like doing that too, But with the Brickfilm Christmas, getting, Christof Wintersock, I don't want to mispronounce his last name. But he volunteered to do the sound effects and the music and everything. And honestly, I was relieved because I was like, I don't have time to do everything else. So I was really grateful for that. But then just like, just seeing what everybody put in, seeing what everybody came up with, and being okay with that, just like, okay, this is their story to tell. This is their little moment. And it was a lot of, it was funny actually. It was kind of like a full-time job for about a month there. The final month of before release.
Well, it's kind of like a big concert with all the the biggest bands all joining together and playing their little part. It's like that, I think. And every person that was involved, they put their little unique kind of swing onto it, with whether it be a commercial or an actual story. And I think it's really nice to have something that is a big event, which isn't necessarily a contest. It's like, mine is the best, or mine's the worst, something like that. It's just everybody takes part and everybody does their brings their all. And I think that's just a really nice. I think it turned out really good. Yeah.
Originally, I had thought. I mean, I first thought of doing a contest. I think it was after the what was the April Fool's one that they had last year? It wasn't Bricks in Motion.
Brick Video Studio Fooled.
Yeah,
contest.
That one. That was the one. After that one, I won the first place on that one, and I was just like, oh well, this is pretty cool. I'm like getting some recognition. I feel like I'm part of this community now, and I really wanted to kind of give something back. And so I thought of hosting a competition. Then I was like, well, what about this Christmas collaboration idea, and I ended up going with that. But it ended up being a lot of work aside from the writing and everything and all of that, the editing, all the creative aspect. There was a lot of messaging people, emailing people, and I think maybe, I don't know, I mean, I wasn't there for the other collaborations that didn't make it that you were talking about, but maybe this is, part of that aspect, was going on there and like, searching through from the beginning of the forum, people who are like, oh, that sounds like an interesting idea. I might want to be involved in that, and messaging them and being like, hey, you expressed some interest at one point. Would you be, would you consider still doing it? And then, every little thing, somebody made a commercial, and then I would be like, we have 3 commercials now. Hey, everybody, come on. And so there was a lot of like just like going in, messaging people, keeping people updated, you know, all that stuff that doesn't actually have to do with the making of the movie. That, and you know, between that and the actual making of the movie, that's what ended up making it be like a full-time thing. So I would be animating, I'd be like, oh, I need a break. So then I would go, I had the other computer set up in the kitchen where I would like go check the email and like see, you know, listen to the music that Christof had sent, and, you know, just kind of do some of the business aspect of it, and then hop back on the animation. So yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I am a big fan of Christof's like, you know, films and stuff. But also, I think he did a really good score. I think for the film, it went really well.
It did, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I also love the clip he made for it. His story in the film.
Super funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of my favourite parts of the film. That was really funny.
But I really couldn't believe just how quickly it was made, just a matter of months, compared to every other project that I've seen. And I guess having a deadline helped, that you actually had to get it out for Christmas.
Yeah. Although here's the thing is that I think it didn't come out soon enough before Christmas, because I think there was only about a week left before everybody was like over the whole Christmas thing. So if anybody ever does a Christmas thing, try to get it out by the beginning of December, not the third week.
Yeah.
I mean, you did better than a lot of things. I'd kind of would have assumed that it would have been right down to the wire, like releasing on the, you know, December 24th or 25th. That's often the way with brick films that get made for a Christmas deadline.
Yeah, I think I wanted to originally release it a week earlier than it came out, but there were a couple people who were like away at college or things, who, you know, there was one person in particular, I think it was, again, I'm terrible with names. I want to say it was Whammy, but I could be wrong. Who was like, no, I'm really committed to doing this. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna do it, but I need another week because I won't be home from college till then, and all my Legos and everything are at home. And I was like, and he convinced me, so I was like, okay, we'll do it. We'll keep it another week. And you know, I probably needed that extra week, in the end. So.
But I mean, that's always something that I think you have to sort of put in mind, is that when you're making a seasonal kind of, you know, specific thing, like say like Christmas or something, you want to really release it a fair amount of time before the actual, you know, thing itself, you know, like Christmas. Because I think what I've always found is if I ever release a Christmas themed like video or brick film, they don't usually get the same amount of views as something that is non-seasonal, you know. So that's always something you have to kind of put in mind, I think. But with that being said, I think A Brickfilm Christmas was a big success, I think, and it, I think people are still talking about it, and yeah, I think it really managed to achieve a lot with that. So I think it was a big, you know, highlight to end off the year.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's something that we always remember now of 2017. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's definitely one of my, you know, most proud accomplishments just in life, really, as far as, you know, things that I've been a part of or helped create. You know, there's a few things here and there throughout life where it's like, hey, you know, that's something that I'm really proud to have been involved in, and I think this is definitely one of those things for me. So it'll always be, you know, even if all the brick filming, everything, and YouTube and everything were to die and to go away, I think it'll always be something that would stick with me as like something that my life is better for having been involved in. I don't know. It's a proud moment for me.
But yeah, okay, I asked this question quite a lot. I think it was quite so what would you say is the most difficult thing you've ever had to animate?
I did hear you ask this question the other night. I've been listening to these podcasts while animating, which I think you guys touched on in the last podcast. The idea of listening to podcasts while animating. The most difficult thing I've ever had to animate would have to be something on a rig. Probably on the current project I'm working on with Digital Wizards, because we're using these large action figures, and some of them are very, you know, posable and flexible and have all kinds of good articulations, and some of them just don't. Some of them, you know, because they're based on, there's, you know, Freddy Krueger and, you know, Predator and some of all these different kind of characters, and some of them just don't want to move, or you get them into place and you know, or you have like the wire armature, or not the armature, what do you call it? The rig, the fly rig, and just, I don't know. It can be a hassle sometimes. Some of these characters, you think you have them moving in the right way. Actually, specifically, I'm going to say the Lego buildable figures, which fall apart far more than I expected them to. So then the whole thing falls over. Then you try to line it up to where it was, and it's impossible. So it's like, oh, I guess he's going to start moving now, and then you have to like figure out what is the motion that he can do based on, oh, he's suddenly, over to the right a little bit. Well, I guess he's going to start leaning to the right and go look at this other thing, or I don't know. You try to find motivations for the mistakes to make it look like it's part of the next action that's going to happen. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the specifically Brickfilm stuff.
I'd say the buildable figures are a good example of how, when you're an animator, you look at them and think, oh, those will totally work for animation. And then you get your hands on them and you find out they weren't designed to be animated at all.
No. In fact, they have these things where there's like a gear on their back, where you like twist the gear and one of the arms moves. And like the first thing I did was I was like, okay, we need to take that gear out and rebuild the arm so it's not connected to the gear at all, because I think I ended up doing that on one of the figures. Yeah, and then just like the pegs slide out and things. But yeah, you're right, exactly. I remember seeing those at the at the store and thinking, oh, these are so cool. These like 10-inch, they're like Bionicle, but they're Star Wars. Like, how cool is that? I'm totally gonna animate these. And then I got to animate them. I was like, yeah, they're all right.
Yeah,
they're pretty cool. But not quite. I'm not about to rush out and go buy some.
You look at them like, oh my god, it's like they made them just for animators. Then you get them and you find out, oh wait, no, they actually didn't. Not quite.
Yeah, and it's crazy because like the joints, they're really stiff sometimes. They're like, you try to move it and it's like, and then you can't really get it into the place you want. But at the same time, they don't seem to be strong enough to hold the pose sometimes. So it's like, wait, that's like a kind of a paradox. Yeah. You would think they're either going to be loose or tight, but they're conveniently loose or inconveniently the wrong thing of whatever it is you're trying to do. But in the long run, they're still animatable.
Yeah. And
I think that the project we've done with that, they're doing a lot of posts on it right now. But it's gonna be pretty funny, and it's a lot of fun. It's going to be a good project.
Actually, I never considered that you don't have to actually do the rig removal yourself. That must be nice.
Yeah, it is. They have a couple people working on all that, and I still try to keep the rigs to a minimum. Take them out as soon as I'm not using them, or keep them behind a character or something. Luckily, having had to do my own rig removal before, it's easier to like keep in mind, to make their job easier. Although I forget every now and then, sorry guys. But yeah, I think as far as animating Brickfilms, the hardest thing for me was like when I first started, I didn't have Dragon Frame or anything. I did, I had an SLR. I still have an SLR, but I've stopped using it. But I was kind of just animating blind, trying to remember the things that I had learned in school. Like, oh, I need to, slow out of this pose and then like do some overlapping action, and then I would watch it and I'd be like, oh, it's way too fast. So then I would like slow down frames. I think there's probably mixed frame rate on my early couple Brickfilms, where I would just like kind of extend things until the timing felt right. I'm amazed that my first couple Brickfilms were received as well as they were. I don't think they would be now. I mean, like you were saying, the standards have raised, I think. I'm even talking about just like 2 years ago when the ones that are go to the oldest stuff on my channel. I don't think that stuff would make top
like
10
your 2016 tag entry.
Right. Yeah. Eventually, I did end up getting. Oh, let's see. No, I tried to do the Chuck Norris thing with a webcam, looking at one angle to like see the animation on the screen, because my SLR doesn't connect to. It doesn't have the live view. And I think I did about half of it that way and gave up on it and just said, well, whatever, I'm just going to do it with the, I'm just going to guess. But I think once I did get Dragon Frame and I was able to start just like seeing the playback and everything, it just helped so much to right away just have that feedback and everything. And I don't know how like people like Ray Harryhausen did it, where they would animate and it was all on film, so they would have to wait a day or two probably to see the rushes and then be like, oh, okay, it works or it's not working, and then reanimate. So I think we're really kind of spoiled in the modern technology here. But yeah, essentially that's why I switched over to the C920 during the Brickfilm Christmas, because it had just become too difficult using the SLR, because without live view, I mean, I couldn't use it with Dragon Frame or anything. And I know you're curious, Sean, about the Lego Studios camera, which I picked up at, I can't remember if it was at a garage sale or a secondhand shop or something. I remember I had wanted that as a kid when it first came out, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. And then I checked the back of my computer, and there was, or the family computer back then, we didn't all have computers, and there was no USB on port on our computer because it was like, so I was like, okay, I kind of gave up on that. And then years later I found it, and it didn't even work with Windows anymore and everything, but I did find out that it worked with Linux. So I was able to use it for that one shot in the Christmas thing.
That's actually interesting. I didn't know it worked with Linux, because I have one, but I haven't tested it yet. So I better try it with Linux now.
Yeah, it worked right out of the box. I didn't have to install any drivers or anything. I don't even know if you have to do that with Linux. I plugged it in and it worked.
When I heard that you shot that sequence with the Studios camera, I was surprised, but mainly because the quality was so good. It didn't look like Studios. I don't know if there's any secret to that.
I don't know if there's a secret to that. It's probably in the lighting, I guess.
Yeah, it probably is.
Most of that sequence I shot actually with the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation Eye camera, which I picked up off of eBay for like $5 because I just wanted to, mess around with a little webcam or something. So most of that sequence was done with that. But then when it came to because the witch gets all, which is my mom, by the way. Hi, Mom. She gets all up in her face all up in the camera, and the PlayStation camera wouldn't focus that close. And actually for that scene, I think I ended up, I cracked open the case of the PlayStation camera and messed around with it so I could fiddle with the focus, but I still couldn't focus it that close, so I had to bust out the old what do you call that, Lego Studios camera, which I don't think I've ever used before or since because like you said, the quality is so awful.
Maybe the quality might be better than it was in the past, simply because when you upload things now it's not as compressed. That kind of thing probably makes quite a difference, I just assume.
Yeah.
Possibly, but plug one of those things in and you're gonna be like, no, this looks awful.
Well, also, I suspect that rendering with the original Lego Studios software compressed it heavily.
Oh yeah, that's probably. I don't have the software or anything for that.
Yeah, so usually using the camera without the actual software it came with results in a better picture.
It must have been really awful then.
Oh yeah, really awful.
Yeah. But for when did that come out? Like the
2000.
Late 90s, mid? Oh, was it that late? Okay. So maybe back then that was still pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty cutting edge, really, as far as I can tell. Kind of ahead of the curve. I wouldn't have thought of webcams as being standard by 2000.
No, that's true. They were still kind of in their infancy.
But yeah. So before we actually head over to the showcase, is there anything that you would like to ask, Quentin?
I feel like I had something to say about Brickfilm Christmas. Something more. What was it? Well,
one. Oh, go ahead.
What? No. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say one thing that was interesting about Brickfilm Christmas is that I've always animated in 12. Or I animate in 12 but edit in 24 because there's times when I want to have a stagger or something really fast that like a vibration doesn't really work in 12. But when it came to Brickfilm Christmas, I remember I proposed that it be done in 12 because I figured, well, that's probably what everybody would want. And then a whole bunch of people were like, no, we want 15. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go with the majority here.
Yeah. I think it was actually me that came in and said, I would highly recommend that for the good of the project, you choose 15.
Yeah, and so that was a little bit strange for me at the time. I'm currently doing 15 at Digital Wizards on this project, although on previous projects we've done 12. So I guess that was a good preparation for that. But I remember at the time just thinking, oh, this feels weird. I was glad at the time that most of what I was doing was animating to dialogue because it kind of gave me a better sense of the timing, knowing what everybody was saying and when they were going to do it and everything. So anyway, that was just an interesting experience for me and probably a good preparation for life and, getting outside of my box a little bit.
Yeah, did you have to add like extra frames on my part of the Brickfilm Christmas? Because I shot at 12 frames per second.
Yeah, I remember that yours specifically, and I think there were one or two others who were, and I think what I ended up doing was I'm sure I didn't add frames or do anything. What I did was the first thing I did was on everybody's clips, I made sure that I wasn't going to get any kind of like ghosting or that kind of like blurred in between frame where two frames are kind of visible. Because I didn't want to do that to anybody. Because I don't know, I really hate that.
I hate that so much as well. Yeah.
It's kind of smudgy, and I'd rather have a lower or inconsistent frame rate that looks choppy than that.
Yeah, I'd choose
I don't know.
over that any day. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure when I rendered out the entire video, I did it probably in 30 frames per second. So if you went through it frame by frame, you probably would see extra frames here and there on yours, but it wasn't like something that I did intentionally. It was just like how it would have rendered out. But again, because it wouldn't, it doesn't divide evenly into 30. 12 doesn't. But by checking off the box that says, I think it's called a resample.
That's it. Yeah.
In Vegas. So I turned off I disabled resample on all clips to make sure that the ones that were at 12 frames per second wouldn't end up with the blurry, the gross thing, whatever we're going to call that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a newer version of Vegas recently enough, and resampling was on by default. And I was trying to make a film for a deadline, and I rendered it with about an hour to go, and it came out looking horrible with all these keyframes.
Oh,
so I was just
sorry.
whizzing around in the menus, desperately trying to find what was causing the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really hate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so should we head over to the showcase?
Suppose we should.
Yeah, I was going to get a recording here. I was going to get the little Lego steps, so we could, and then maybe like falling off the cliff, like, ah! I don't know. But I forgot to prepare that. So anyway, here we go. Let's head over to the showcase.
Okay. So, my pick is A Fixed System, which is a 2015 Brickfilm by Alan Fisher. And this won multiple awards at the Bricks Emotion Awards and the Brickfilmers Guild in 2015. And I think, personally, it's the standout Brickfilm of 2015 by far. And I think it's easily one of my favourite Brickfilms of all time. And it's one of those ones that, I can look back on and sort of think, this is the kind of Brickfilms that were appearing when I started, And, I think this really inspired me. I think it's one of the, I don't know, I just think it's really kind of profound, and I think it's just, other stuff similar to this has been done in the past, but it's, I don't know, I just think it's just one of the best of its kind. And I guess I'll try and sort of explain the plot briefly. Well, basically it's about this guy, and he has this routine life. Every day is the same, and everything is on repeat, and he kind of starts to notice the kind of overly kind of formulated routine of his life, and he starts discovering that it's all kind of, well, as the title suggests, a fixed system. And so what are your thoughts?
Well, I hadn't not seen this one before, which is not a big surprise. I really liked it. I thought it was very beautiful, actually. I thought there was a lot of color, just the kind of, I don't know if it's the lighting or just kind of the look of it was very nice. I thought the music was really good. It was just really good. I don't know if that was original score or not. If it wasn't, then the music that was chosen for it fit perfectly. And I'm guessing was animated too, because it just, I don't know, it just went with it very well.
It actually was original music. The credits
it
have
was
all
original
the
okay.
individual instruments are credited. The people who
okay, I
performed
forgot
them.
to check that at the end, because it sounded too good to be canned music.
It does, yeah. You wouldn't expect
but
it.
at the same time, it fit the film too well to be like, and then I was like, nobody would, how would you get an original score this good, on a brick film? And I forgot to check that in the credits, so good to know. There's some good rhythmic montage in there, the cutting, when his days, it's showing his days in shorter and shorter succession, just to to show the monotony of it. There was a nice rhythmic editing there. And then, of course, all the little like mini scale buildings, all the little houses in a row, and the factory itself and everything.
Yeah.
Where I think they kind of embraced the idea of, they weren't trying to be an illusion of a bigger building. It was just like, they're miniature, and it was right there, and it was kind of fun.
I definitely got that impression. I think, it's kind of like, they're not ashamed that, unashamedly, like, this is not kind of real. But I think it kind of goes with, I guess you could say it works with the kind of the story, what's going on. He sees that as he kind of realizes that everything is kind of fixed, everything's like, everything's fake. And I guess in a way that is kind of part of it. I guess you could interpret it that way.
Yeah, definitely. There's like that kind of cookie cutter life, like everything's been stamped out of the same mold. So it's not. Yeah, you couldn't do that in every film, I think. Is a good point that you bring up, but it worked in this film.
And I guess, I mean, my one per episode, I guess, the music was absolutely outstanding. I think it's, I've watched this, I can't say how many times I've watched this, it's just so many times, and partly just because of the musical score, I think that's brought me back quite a few times, and I think it's one of my favourite, and I know I talk about a lot about musical scores and Brickfilms, so this piece a lot, but like I think this is one of the best scores in any Brickfilm, I think, ever. And I just think it's just everything about this. I love it so much.
I think it's easy to not give the score enough consideration, because the first time you watch it, you just think to yourself, the music's so good that he must have just taken it from some other film. So you don't really think about it.
Right,
and as well, I think the first couple minutes were a little bit deceptive, because I think the first time I saw this, I thought, well, this is a bit boring. It's the same thing over and over again. And then I kind of realised that they were doing something with that. But I think you don't ever make the mistake of thinking, oh, this is pretty dull, because it does get pretty great.
I also liked at the very end, the whole structure of the world and everything, how abstract it was, and how there's that long kind of tilting shot where it seems like the bricks go on and on and on forever, and then you see kind of like the larger picture, and I guess the whole thing is sort of in miniature. It was a little bit, it was sort of the idea was there, and it was done in such an abstract way, but again, in the cartooniness and the kind of simplicity of the style of the whole film, I think it worked. And
I think as well, one of the things I might point out is that I think the facial animation is actually really good. I think it adds a lot to it. It's kind of like Lego Movie style, I think, and I really like the touch at the very end where they're like his family are starting to kind of realise the same as him. This is all a fixed system, and then his void face morphs back into the smile. I think that's really kind of a really nice touch. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I liked the facial animation at first, and then I felt at like some point it kind of like went maybe too far, or was too smooth, or I think after a while it I don't want to say it got tiring, but I don't know. I think sometimes less is more, and this was like a more is more kind of thing.
I do think that the face animation, it's good at points, but then at other points it's sort of over animated a little bit.
I could see that.
Maybe there's too many frames.
Yeah, I think I just found it a little bit distracting at a couple points. I think there was one point too. It was where it shows his face and like the day is going by in all the frames, and it's just that close up on the face. I think like some of the alignment was a little bit off in a couple of those shots.
Yeah, and also in one of them you can still see the dot that's been drawn on his face to like track the face too. Yeah,
so I mean, I liked the facial animation, but it became distracting to me at one point. I guess you could
kind of say that maybe it was shot. It was done in a different frame rate than the actual animation itself, because I'm going to assume this is either like 12 or 15, and maybe it was animated at 24 or something like that, because that might be why it seems a little bit too overly animated, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't think it's too smooth.
Yeah, but is there anything else you'd like to say before we move on to the next one?
Well, it's really good. It's usually good to end it on praise when it's a film that you really like.
It is. I really enjoyed this film, and I would definitely recommend it.
Yes.
It's something that you could show to somebody who had never seen a brick film before, and it would, they wouldn't need to appreciate it on that level.
We love that here.
Yeah.
And also, I need to mention I like Cognizance, and I like The Letter. Culmination is a really good film. I've got to mention these. It's like it's the World of Brickfilms podcast bingo, basically. All these things have to be mentioned.
Yeah, and if you have free space on all of those, you probably have just one. So,
Yeah.
you get 50% of the house takings, which is nothing. So,
It seems like
congratulations.
a new square on the bingo will have to be referencing the fact that certain things seem to come up on every single episode over and over again.
Oh, it's a world within. Oh man, you just blew
It's
up
a
my
paradox. It's an endless paradox. But should we head over to Sean? What's your
So I
pick?
picked the film Design Flaw. It seems to be that this week's theme is factories and everybody having the Lego smiley face, and one person realizing that the world isn't as great as it seems. And yeah, that's Design Flaw in a nutshell. So it's kind of an older film by now, really, and not particularly well known, I don't think. But it's kind of half well made, or there's a lot of dodgy green screening, but other than that, it's
Yeah.
really well made. I think, and it's sort of like an older brick film, but at the same time, it doesn't look like a webcam brick film. It has a lot of nice soft focus backgrounds and some nice cinematography.
Yeah. Do you know that kind of thing of like you look at old brick films and you kind of think, yeah, that technical aspect isn't very good, but this is from so and so. I feel like the end of that point is like 2011. I can still forgive some kind of like technical stuff which isn't great. If it's from like 2011, or it gets to like 2012, you kind of expect a high standard, if that makes sense. So in a way, it didn't really ruin it for me at all, because there was quite a lot of 2011 brick films that are kind of like that, I think. If that
It
makes sense.
Yeah. Like you consider it to be old enough that you have to like judge it by the time.
Yeah,
Whereas any newer, it's like kind of within recent memory.
yeah. And it's kind of like you get things like Egyptian Holiday in 2011, and it's kind of like, this is your standard now.
Have fun.
Yeah. But actually about the film, again, I think one of the things I really like about is a kind of like little detail, like the face of the main character is kind of chipped, and it's kind of formed into this kind of smug kind of face, and I thought that was a really nice detail to kind of separate him from the other figures, and I kind of like that kind of thing, altering faces and that kind of thing. I think it's probably more subtle than kind of like, doing the mouth animation and that kind of thing. It's kind of just like this little detail which it adds to the character as well, being like, he's different. He was born different.
And also the fact that he has the old blocky smiley face.
Yeah.
Where his actual head is bigger than everyone else's head.
Yeah, because all these brick films are kind of like this kind of dystopian kind of, 1984 kind of thing, where everything is too perfect and controlled and everybody's happy. That does sort of that is definitely a theme in this episode, I think, and it's like, I think those like minifigure heads are really good for that kind of thing. It's like these very basic designs, and everything's too perfect.
Seems to be a conclusion that people land on naturally. Like they look at all these smiling minifigures and they think, "Oh, there has to be something going on here. Why are they always smiling?"
It's like 1950s propaganda. There's something not quite right.
It's too happy. Yeah.
I remember as a kid that always kind of made more sense with like the city. There's like, there's the watering the flowers in the garden and they're all smiling, but then you get to like the castle sets and it's like, the thieves are using the battering ram to knock down the castle door and the knights are charging out and they're all smiling. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There were a lot of nice touches in Design Flaw. Again, to me, it did definitely feel like an older brick film. But like, for example, one thing that stood out was when he sat down to eat with the characters at the cafe, he actually pulls in the chair behind him, and that was very nicely animated. Usually, you just kind of plop into a chair because it's easy. In fact, there were a lot of things effects-wise too that couldn't have been easy, like digitally adding food into their hands and making them eat it, which I don't really know if it was necessary, but it's interesting to see.
Yeah, but the digital effect that was most impressive to me was when he put on his shoes, which is something you never.
I have that in my
see
notes
in a
here
brick
too.
film.
Yeah. And just like the extra effort that went into some of those little moments. Like filmmaking wise, there were a couple things that or maybe not necessarily filmmaking, but story wise, when they get to the cafe and then there's the sign that has the green and the gray shirts that are crossed out. which was interesting because then at first I was like, wow, are we going to meet any of them? What are they all about? But then I realized like also it's like a class thing. And this guy who's complaining about life is not even he's in the upper classes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and he's still not
I think
satisfied
there's
with
like
life.
different ways you can interpret that. It can be about class, it could be about race. And I think I like, again, that's never really addressed. It's just kind of left to interpretation, and it adds a nice level of world building. So
It's
you're
nice
just,
to not be in your face
Yeah.
with it.
because if they had added a scene where they go over and like, there's no greens allowed in here, they throw him out, that would be a little bit too kind of over the top. They do show him being, they do show a green, torso minifigure being oppressed, and I think that's kind of enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's enough that it's like you said, it's not in your face, but at the same time, it's not obscure. It's not like, oh, I don't understand why were they arresting that guy, But we had seen the sign, so yeah, I think there's an important thing, especially when it comes to some of these more allegorical kind of brick films. Some of them can be a bit obscure, to the point where it's like, wow, that was really interesting, but I have no idea what I saw. One that comes to mind is the one that Took a Brick made. I think it was for Brawl last year. Acclamation, where they're in like some kind of futuristic sci-fi prison, and there's a giant hand, and or maybe it's a close-up of a hand, and it was very interesting. It's like, oh man, I just wanted to watch it over and over again, but it's very kind of up for interpretation. Whereas something like this it's more clear what's happening, but at the same time it's done in like a subtle
what
kind of tasteful way.
What I kind of like about this film is that it's a talk. The whole film is, and it's basically this debate about everything being too perfect, and everything is quite straightforward. You're being told the allegory, but within that world there are little details that the viewer can kind of pick up upon, which actually expands the world and is sort of subtly put in there, not really addressed too much. And I think it had a nice balance. I think, yeah.
Another filmmaking thing that I noticed was that when the two men are having the conversation at the cafe, the camera seems to cut across the 180 line, and they switch sides, and it kind of like, at first I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, and then I started thinking, well, maybe they're actually the same person. Maybe all of this is like an internal conflict that's happening within one person's mind, which is that's just speculation on my part.
I do actually like that
kind of
interpretation where basically it's all in his head, kind of going, everything's perfect and he's good, and he's sort of saying to himself, but it's not. And then in the end it's just him, and he's going, I'm not happy.
I kind of took that to be just that highlighting the similarities between them.
Yeah.
That it makes it confusing because they're the same.
I think the earthquake scene was particularly well done with the ceiling caving in and everything.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to mention two of my favorite things, ceilings and bridges, show up in this brick film.
Yeah, that's on the bingo too, I think.
It will be.
But like, I just like as well. Sorry, I'm trying to think.
Actually, no. You know what really has to be pointed out? They go under a bridge, and then you see the ceiling of the bridge, and that's pretty next level.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what. Because I was going to say something about the film, right? I just can't remember what I was going to say. But let me just think about this a minute. Oh yeah. So I actually saw this maybe about 3 weeks ago, actually, because someone mentioned it in the Discord, and so it was kind of a surprise when I saw it on the thing, because I thought, oh wait, I watched this recently. So yeah, I had heard this film before, and I thought I was thinking about it for a bit, so I was thinking this would be a good one to sort of talk a little bit about. But yeah, so shall we head over to the last one? So Christof, your pick.
Yeah, now I know I haven't been around as long, and I felt a lot of pressure trying to come up with something that wasn't too new, but I wasn't able to. Sticking with the theme of factories and people who are not as complacent as they're expected to be, my choice is Life by MBStudio, in which again, we're here as a factory and the people are being built, and one of the people on the assembly line decides to try to break loose because he doesn't want to live the life that's been programmed for him. And it drew some comparison, I remember when it came out, to another film called Indus, which I think has a lot of similarities, but I think that is a little more sci-fi, and I feel this is a little bit more allegory. which is why I went with this, because I think I have like a special interest in allegorical brick films. I think there are a few that come to mind, but that's a topic for another time. I really liked the sound design in this film, particularly in the shots with the control room, with the guy with the faceless, guy in the control room, and there's that kind of nasty buzz of the green light and the alarm. Some of the sounds, these kind of like harsh sounds played against this soft music, which I believe is a Chopin or Liszt or one of those.
Chopin, yeah.
Okay. So it provides a really nice contrast and kind of soundscape for the whole thing.
One thing I'd like to point out is that he later on he didn't actually finish the entire thing, and he actually made a director's cut which is called Bring Me a Dream.
Bring Me a Dream.
And I actually prefer the original because I feel like Bring Me a Dream has been done a little bit too much in films, and I feel like it's too on the nose about its kind of like allegorical thing, because that's a typical like sort of creepy 1950s song, and it's kind of like it's been used quite a lot now for that kind of thing of everything's too perfect. And I feel like Chopin's music is actually better for the film because it's less on the nose. I think it's more like you can interpret it more because it's a smooth like a soothing, beautiful piece of music, but it's not happy and it's not necessarily sad. So it's a nice kind of almost neutral kind of tune, and I feel like it's better. Yeah.
I agree.
I agree as well. I do enjoy the Bring Me a Dream version of the film, in a way, in the same way that it reminds me of like when you read a book and it's like, oh, it's such a great book, and then you see a movie of the book and it's like, well, they did a really good job of making a film out of that book, but I mean the book is always better, right? And that's kind of the feeling I get with this, like the Bring Me a Dream version. It has like that kind of whole extended sequence. There's like that, what's the story? Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. If you're familiar with that story, famous short story, where the guy's about to be hung, and then it goes into this whole fantasy sequence about him escaping and everything. But anyway, so that kind of extended sequence. The music style is more kind of blockbustery and stuff, particularly with the later music. It's the Bring Me a Dream song, but it's like a modern interpretation. So the director's cut is kind of a remix, kind of a remake. It kind of reminds me a lot more of like the Hollywood blockbuster version of like this little independent.
With the criticisms out of the way, I would recommend watching that one as well, because I think it's you get to see his fully realized kind of vision. He gets to really finish the film properly, because obviously in the end of the film, and I think it kind of before I actually read that he didn't actually make it on time, I was a bit kind of surprised by the ending where it was just like snapshots of like pictures, and then when you see Bring Me a Dream, it kind of it shows you that he did have, here's his fully realized vision. But yeah, they're both worth watching.
Yeah, I think it's I would recommend watching both. If you only have time for one, probably watch the Chopin version. But I would definitely recommend watching both and then just kind of comparing, contrasting, see for yourself.
Yeah, but just before we move on from the music, I just want to mention, I agree with everything that you've said already about why you prefer the original version with its use of music. But also, I find it very hard to take a brick film that uses Bring Me a Dream seriously, because I've seen a brick film called Soldering Your Balls Saves Marriages. And I think anyone who's seen that would agree.
Well,
okay, that'll be my homework.
What I always think of is Lucas's film, which again is very similar. A That Country from 2016 or 17.
Same year, I believe, 17.
And again, it had that tune. And when I think of brick films with Bring Me a Dream, I think of that, and it's kind of similar. I feel like, do you know what I mean? And I think I've probably seen it again used in media. It's kind of a popular song, but yeah. Anyway, I guess.
But anyway, Other than the music,
it's like the musical equivalent of the Smiley brick film. I mean, the Smiley minifigure. It's like that perfect 1950s. Too happy to be true. I think this is why it's kind of like the default thing to go for the creepy 1950s feel. Anyway, so moving on.
Yeah. So yeah, have you got anything other than the music to say about the film?
Something I want to point out is that so in a lot of recent brick films there's been a lot more inset lighting and brick stuff lighting, but I really like when films actually show the wiring, and this one you can see a lot of the wiring of the lights, and it gives it a nice kind of grungy look, like
industrial.
The factory's just been thrown together, like they just made it so that it just works and they don't care about how it looks.
Yeah.
And it mightn't even be intentional. It might just be because of the time constraint for Brawl, but I think it works really well for the film's
It's
benefit.
very industrial, and everything's like, it's kind of one of those cases where it feels like this building has been made simply for its purpose, and nothing else has been.
Yeah.
There's no nothing else has been added to it. It's just it does this thing. You don't need to worry about those little details. I guess that's kind of what it was going for, and I think it's pretty effective. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I remember there was one of the little machines that they passed through, where it's just like the 1x4 bricks built, and they're like built in kind of like weird diagonal kind of way, which I thought was kind of interesting. I guess there's not a whole lot to say animation wise, since most of it takes place on the conveyor
I guess
belt.
it's something that you could take inspiration from if you didn't have a lot of time to make a film.
Yeah.
True.
You could try and come up with a concept that doesn't require much animation but still moves.
Yeah.
I think it made good use of the stormtrooper torsos as well.
Yeah. That was kind of cool.
Kind of repurposing those into a different kind of armor.
Because you used the blank heads, and the helmets, the space helmets. Quite creepy. Yeah. I think it's I like that too.
And overall, the lighting too. I think it was like really, like you said, not just the lighting itself, but just like the cinematography of it. How kind of dark it was, but not like dim.
Yeah, there's a lot of bright lights around, but it's dark at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's not the easiest thing to pull off, because I've been trying to do that recently, and it's how to fiddle around with the settings and how you like the set. It's an interesting challenge, but I think lighting is something it's definitely an interesting aspect of filmmaking in general. I think trying to set the tone, because if you like the scene right, it's really it's part of what makes that film, and I think. I think that's a big part of it. The tone, the feel of the film, definitely helped by the dark lighting, and you're using all of those like coloured lights to light it up a bit more. Yeah, I really like that.
Mm-hmm. It does have a nice, distinct look.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's different enough from Indus to be its own thing. I didn't actually discover Indus until I'd seen this, because I heard lots of people making. Comparisons to it, and I still prefer Life. I think. I mean, had it been released first, I think this would probably rank a bit higher on the Brawl 2017 entries. I think probably top 3. I'd say.
Well, it was 4th, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so it didn't do bad.
No. But, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great talk. I really enjoyed having you on the show. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. It's been
so
fun.
where can they find you?
Let's see. You could find me on YouTube /TOF Animation, TOF Animation, one word. I believe it's on Instagram /TOF Animation, same thing. And Twitter, I'm not really on as much anymore, but this TOF, THISTOF, one word. And then also, like I said, I've been doing a lot of work with Digital Wizards these days, so keep an eye out on their channel for some of the stuff. Jurassic Disney World, and then the upcoming couple different projects.
Any estimated release dates?
I believe I heard beginning of October.
Okay.
I'll keep an eye out.
But,
possibly sooner, but yeah. That's about a month away.
For all the viewers, watch A Brickfilm Christmas, watch the Olympics film, and also watch Reception as well, and Ma Vie Experiment.
That's good as well.
Just watch all of them.
And I was a big fan of Changing of the Guard as well.
Yeah, you know what? Just do yourself a favour and watch his entire filmography. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.